Alright, in this video we'll start a brand new Android Studio project. So let's click Start a new Android Studio project. Application name Dictionary, and in company domain I just put riyadh.com. You can put yours. And here is the project location. Now let's click Next. The minimum API we are setting is 17. As you can see, it covers 98% of the devices. Now let's click Next. We'll be working on an empty activity, so let's select empty activity and Next. Let's keep activity name main activity and finish. So this is what we have after creating an empty activity. Pretty empty as expected, but don't worry, we'll fill this up in no time. Now before we do anything, let's add some implementation in build.gradle. And here we added support, design, card view, recycler view, and material progress bar. This is a progress bar library, and we'll be using all of this implementation in our app. Now we sync the project. We don't have a menu, so let's create a menu. Resource, new, directory, menu, and now menu, new, file, menu underscore main dot xml. Okay, so let's create the menu, and inside the menu we need to add menu items. So settings and exit is the menu item. These items have their own ID and title, and this order in category is their order. Now we need to add this XML file in the main activity. First, we need to override onCreate option menu, and this getMenuInflator.inflate adds our menu main to the action bar. And to import this menu, we need to press Alt Enter on Windows and Option Enter on Mac. And here in import, we can see the menu is imported. And now to handle the clicks on our menu item, we need to overwrite on option item selected. And here we need to import this menu item. And here in this variable ID, we get the item ID. For the click on settings, let's keep it empty for now. And for the click on exit, this system.exit exits the app. So this is the design we are going for our main activity. We have our toolbar, and this is the search view. Now before doing anything, we need to add some colors and styles. Values, colors, and here we added two colors, white and text hint. And now on to styles.xml. Because we'll be using our own toolbar, we need to set Windows action bar to false and window no title to true. We also need to add style for our search view. We just set the text color to text hint. Now on to our activity main XML file. And here we'll use coordinator layout. Coordinator layout provides additional level of control over touch events between child's view, which basically means it can handle complex behavior of an activity. So let's get rid of these. Layout width and height is match parent. Now let's create app bar layout inside the coordinator layout. And here the theme is dark action bar. If you remember, we set Windows action bar to false and window no title to true in this theme. Now let's create the toolbar. So the ID is toolbar, layout width match parent, layout height, action bar size. This action bar size is specified in the Android Studio. Background color is color primary. And the pop-up theme is app compat light. Now let's create a horizontal linear layout. And here the background color is color primary. Now inside this linear layout, we'll add the search view. Here is some margins, and the theme is from our styles.xml, which we created earlier. Clickable and focusable is true, and the search icon is from our drawable folder. This is the icon. Now on to our main activity. Let's add the toolbar. So the toolbar is added. Now let's add the search view. We need to set on-click listener on this search view. This on-click listener is needed because we want the whole search view clickable. If we didn't add on-click listener, we'll be able to only click on the icon. Clicks on here and here won't work. As you can see, I already created an empty activity and named it word meaning activity. In this activity, we're going to show the meaning of the word. And this is the design we are going for our word meaning activity. We have a collapsing toolbar, a tab layout, pronunciation button, a back button, and this area here is the view pager. If you are confused right now, don't worry. It will be more clear when we finish implementing it. Now we need to add some styles in our styles.xml. So the style name is expanded title text, and the text size of this style is 26 sp. Now another style for our tab layout, my tab text. It has some text styling properties. Now on to our activity word meaning XML file. And here again we are going to use coordinator layout. So let's get rid of these. Layout width and height is match parent, and inside the coordinator layout we are going to create a layout. So layout width match parent, layout height wrap content, and the theme is dark action bar. Now inside the layout we are going to create collapsing toolbar layout. So layout width match parent, layout height wrap content, and then here is some margins. And this layout scroll flag is the scrolling behavior of this collapsing toolbar. We added scroll and exit until collapsed. And this expanded title text appearance is from our styles.xml, which we created earlier. Now inside this collapsing toolbar layout, we are going to create an empty image view for spacing. Layout width match parent, layout height 180 dp, and the collapse mode is parallax. This collapse mode means the image view will scroll in a parallax fashion. And now we're going to create an image button to the right. And this image button will be the pronunciation button. Here is some margins, layout gravity is bottom right, collapse mode is parallax, and the background is from our drawable folder. This is the image. And now let's create the toolbar. So the ID is mToolbar, layout width match parent, layout height, action bar size, pop-up theme, app compat light, and collapse mode is pin. Pin means the toolbar won't scroll all the way. Now we'll create tab layout. It will be outside the collapsing toolbar layout but inside the app layout. So the ID is tab layout, layout width match parent, layout height action bar size, layout gravity bottom, background is color primary, tab text appearance is from our styles.xml file, and tab mode is fixed. You can also use tab mode scrollable. Scrollable means you can scroll the tabs. If you have a long list of tabs, then scrollable would be a good fit, but we'll have only 4 tabs, so we'll use tab mode fixed. Now outside the app layout, we'll create the view pager. So the ID is tab underscore view pager, width match parent, height match parent, layout behavior, app bar scrolling view behavior. We need to add this behavior because we want to collapse the toolbar when we scroll the view pager. Now on to our word meaning activity.java. So let's add the toolbar. For now the title is set to English words. Now let's create a back navigation in the toolbar. First we set navigation icon, and this is a back icon from our drawable folder. And now to handle the click on this navigation icon, we need to overwrite on option item selected. And now this navigation icon will work as a back button. Now for convenience sake, we'll put them in a different package. So new, package, fragments, fragment, new, Java class name, fragment definition, superclass, fragment. This fragment will contain the definition. Now let's create an empty constructor. Now we need to create an XML layout for this fragment. Layout, new, XML, layout XML file. And the file name is fragment_definition. Let's clear this out. The parent of this layout will be the view pager from the word meaning activity, which has a collapsing toolbar. This is the view pager I'm talking about. We would want to collapse the toolbar when we scroll the text in this layout. So we need to create a nested scroll view. So if you are confused right now, once you see the effect, it will be more clear to you. So let's create the nested scroll view. Layout width and height is match parent. Now inside the nested scroll view, let's create a vertical linear layout. Layout width and height is match parent. And inside this linear layout, we'll create a text view. So the ID is text view D, and here is some styling properties for this text view. Now on to the fragment definition.java. Now let's add the fragment definition XML file. And to do that, we need to overwrite on create view. So the fragment_definition XML file is added to the view of this fragment. Now let's create 3 more similar fragments by copying and pasting this fragment definition. So Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V, and here the name is Fragment Synonyms, and again the name is Fragment Antonyms, and lastly the name is Fragment Example. So let's check this out. Seems alright. We are using the same fragment_definition XML file for all of these fragments. So let's create the view pager variable. And now we need an adapter for this view pager. So private class view pager adapter extends fragment pager adapter. Now we need to create a list item of fragments to contain the 4 fragments, and a list item of strings to contain the 4 titles. And now we'll create the constructor. Now we'll create a method to add our fragments and titles to these lists. So this addFrag method will add our fragments to this mFragment list and add our titles to this mFragment title list. And now we need to override a few methods. This getItem method returns the current fragment, and this getCount returns the size of our fragment list. And lastly, this getPageTitle returns the title of our fragment list. And now we need to create a function to set up the view pager. So private void setupViewPager, and it takes the view pager as its parameter. And here the adapter is the instance of view pager adapter class. And now we call this addFrag method with our fragment and title as its parameter one by one. And lastly, we set this adapter to the view pager variable. Now let's call this setupViewPager. And if the view pager is not null, we call setupViewPager. And now we need to set up the view pager to the tab layout. And this tab layout.setupViewPager will set the view pager to this tab layout. And now we need to add tab selected listener to this tab layout. And on tab selected, it changes the view pager to the selected tab. To complete this listener, we need to override two more methods. Right now we don't have any use for this method, so let's leave this empty. We didn't add an intent to go to our word meaning activity, so let's add that in the main activity. For now, let's add the intent in this onClick listener. Okay, so let's run the app. So this is the main activity. These are the menus, settings and exit. And when we click on the search view, we go to the word meaning activity. So the collapsing toolbar is working very smoothly. Now if you remember, we added nested scroll view in the XML layout of the fragments. So if we are scrolling the view pager, the collapsing toolbar is collapsing. The swiping of the view pager is also working quite nicely. If you remember, we set the tab mode of this tab layout to fixed. So these are fixed, not scrollable. And lastly, the back button is working as well. As you can see, I already created an empty activity and named it settings activity. This is the design we are going for our settings activity. We have clear history and about. These two are card views. Okay, now let's go to activity_setting XML file. Remember, in our styles.xml we set window action bar to false and window no title to true. So now we need to create our own toolbar. So let's create app bar layout, layout with match parent, layout height, wrap content, and the theme is from our styles.xml file. Now let's create our toolbar inside this app bar layout. Toolbar ID is toolbar ID_settings. And the other properties of toolbar are same as the one we used in our other two activities. And now let's add a vertical linear layout. Layout width and height is match parent, margin top action bar size. And now inside this linear layout we'll add a card view. Layout width match parent, layout height wrap content, foreground, selectable item background. This will add a ripple effect when we click the card view. Layout margin 2dp, clickable, true. And inside the card view, let's add a text view. Text view ID clear_history, layout with match parent, layout height wrap content, padding 15dp, text clear history, text size 16 sp, and text style bold. And now we'll add another card view like this one. And here the text is about. Okay, now let's add the toolbar in our settings activity.java. So the toolbar is set and the title is settings. Now let's add a back navigation icon. This is the same process as the one we used in our word meaning activity. And now we add on option item selected and the back navigation is set. And now we need to create an intent for this settings activity from our main activity. If you remember, we kept the on option item selected for settings empty. So let's create the intent and this will start the settings activity. Okay, now let's run the app. So let's click menu, settings. We can see clear history and about. And if we click on it, we can see the ripple effect. I have a database here. But to view this database, you need a database browser. The browser I am using here is DB browser for SQLite. If you wish to use this browser, you can get it from sqlitebrowser.org. And you need to download the one for your operating system. So go ahead, download and install it. I provided the database in the resource section of this video. So download the database as well. After installing the database browser, you can open the database and it will probably look like this. So we have two tables, history and words. And this SQLite sequence table is created automatically whenever a table contains an auto increment column. And our history table has an auto incremented column. And that's why this SQLite sequence table is there. History table has _ID and words columns, and this ID is the auto-incremented column. And the words table has _ID, en_word, en_definition, example, synonyms, and antonyms columns. Now let's check the data inside these tables. Browse data. So our history table is empty, and in our words table we have more than 38,000 words, and these are the words. So now let's add the database in the project. First we need to create an asset folder. So new folder, asset folder. And now to add the database in this asset folder, we just simply copy the database and paste it on the asset folder. And here we can see the database. And now we need to create a database helper class. So new Java class, and the name database helper. And the superclass is SQLite Open Helper. And now let's create some variables. db_path is null. db_name is eng_dictionary.db. This name needs to be exactly the same as in the asset folder. And a SQLite database type variable myDatabase, and a context type variable myContext. Now let's create the constructor. The parameter of this constructor is context. This super calls the constructor of SQLite Open Helper. If we control click it, we can see the constructor here. And the parameter this super constructor takes is context dbName factory, which is null, and we just put 1 for the version. And then we set this.myContext to context and this db_path to this string. This string is the location of the user phone memory, and log.e for debugging purposes. Now first we need to copy the database from the asset folder to the user phone memory, and the path we are setting for the database is this db_path. So let's create a method that will copy the database from the asset folder to this path. So the method copy database throws IO exception. We have an input stream variable myInput, and we assign the database which is in the asset folder to this myInput variable, and a string variable out file name db_path plus db_name, and an output stream type variable myOutput, and we assign file output stream to this myOutput variable. This file output stream takes the out file name as its parameter. So the output stream will be saved in this out file name path, which is basically the path of the user phone memory. And now we set the buffer variable to 1024, and here is an integer variable length. And now in this while loop we read the input stream with the speed of this buffer and write it on the output stream. And lastly we flush myOutput and then close myOutput and myInput. And here is a log for debugging purposes. And now we'll create a method to check if the database already exists or not. So public boolean check database, and here is a SQLite database type variable checkDB, and we set it to null. Now let's try to open the database in a try catch block. And here my path is the path where we copied the database in copy database method. And we set checkDB to SQLite database.open database, and the path is my path, factory is null, and we open the database in a read-only mode. So now if we have a database in this path, then checkDB won't be null. But if we don't have a database in this path, then checkDB will be null. And now if checkDB is not null, then we close the database. And here if checkDB is not null, we return true, and if it's null, we return false. And now we'll create a method to call this check database. And if it returns false, which means we don't have a database, then we call this copy database method. So create database throws IO exception, and we assign whatever is returned by this check database to this dvExist variable. And if dvExist is false, which means database doesn't exist, first we get readable database, and then in a try-catch block we call copy database. Now let's create a method to open the database. So open database throws SQL exception, string variable my path is db_path plus db_name, and then we open the database in read-write mode and assign it to this my database variable. And now let's override close method. If database is not null, then we close the database. And the super.close is from the SQLite open helper. If we control click it, we can see the method in SQLite open helper. And now we need to override onCreate. Let's keep onCreate empty. And now to override onUpgrade. So the parameter it takes is the database, and this int I is the old version and int I1 is the new version. And in a try-catch block we delete the existing database and copy the new database. Async task is used to do background processing in Android. If you don't use async task to copy the database, the whole app will freeze while the copying of the database is happening. And if you have a large database, the app will freeze for a longer period of time. So we need to copy the database with async task. So let's create the async task class. New Java class, and the name load database async. Load database async extends async task. Async task has 3 arguments: void, void, boolean. I'll explain these arguments later on this video. Now let's declare some variables. Context type variable context, alert dialog type variable alert dialog, and database helper type variable myDBHelper. And now the constructor. And we set this context to context. Now we need to create an XML layout file for alert dialog. But first let's create a style for this alert dialog. So values styles. So style name myDialog theme, and the parent of this style is light dialog alert, and we set color accent to color primary. This color accent is the color of the text that will appear in the alert dialog. So layout new XML layout XML file, and the name is alert dialog database copying. Now let's add the progress bar. We are using a different progress bar than the usual one. If you remember, we added this progress bar library in build.gradle. So to use this progress bar you need to add that library in build.gradle. Now let's add gravity center in this linear layout. The ID of this progress bar is progress bar, and here is some margins. And now onto our load database async.java. Here we need to override on pre-execute. Pre-execute is called before the main task. So here we'll show the alert dialog. So alert dialog.builder d equal new alert dialog.builder, and here the parameter is the context and the theme from our styles.xml. And here the inflator is the context, and the dialog view is the XML layout in which we have a progress bar. And now we set the title to loading database and set the view to dialog view, and we assign d.create to the alert dialog variable. So the alert dialog is created. And now we set cancelable to false, so the user won't be able to cancel this alert dialog. And lastly we show the alert dialog. So on pre-execute we'll show this alert dialog. And now we need to override do in background. This method is called immediately after the on pre-execute finishes. This is where we'll copy the database. The parameter is void params, and these dots means we can use an array of these params variable. And here we create an object of database helper class myDBHelper, and in a try-catch block we call myDBHelper.createDatabase, which copies the database from the asset folder to the user phone memory. If we control click, we can see this createDatabase method. After copying the database, we close the database and then we return null. And now on progress update, let's keep it empty. And now we need to overwrite on post execute. This is called after the do in background finishes. And now about these arguments, we used void, void and boolean, because in do in background we used void, and on progress update we used void, and on post execute we used boolean. So that's why void, void and boolean. Okay, now let's call this load database async from our main activity. Let's remove this intent. We only used it to test our user interface. And here let's declare database helper variable myDBHelper and a boolean variable database opened and set it to false. We set it to false because the database isn't opened yet. And now we assign new database helper to myDBHelper. And now we check if the database already exists or not with myDBHelper.checkDatabase. If we control click this check database, we can see it returns true if the database already exists and returns false if database doesn't exist. So if it returns true, we call this open database function, and else, which means database doesn't exist, we create an object of load database async named task and execute the task. Now let's implement this open database function. And here we declare open database as a static function. And now in a try-catch block, we open the database and set this database open variable to true. We also need to open the database after async task finishes copying the database. So on post execute, we call main activity.openDatabase. As the open database is a static function, we can just call open database like this. Okay, now let's run the app. So the database is already copied. As the database isn't a very large file, the copying process was pretty fast, so we could barely see our alert dialog. So to slow down the copying process, we can change the buffer size in the database helper class. So let's change it to 64. As the database copying process happens only once, and we already copied it in this phone, so first we need to uninstall it and then reinstall it. So I uninstalled the app. Now let's run the app again. And now we can see our alert dialog with the progress bar. And the copying is done. As we don't want to slow down the database copying process, let's change the buffer size back to 1024. It will show suggestion when the user types a word. Now let's create XML layout for our suggestion adapter. So new XML layout XML, layout name is suggestion row, finish. This layout will be the design for a single row. Let's change the height to wrap content and make this linear layout vertical. Now let's create a horizontal linear layout inside this linear layout. Now inside this linear layout, we add an image view and a text view. The image source is from our drawable folder. Now the text view, the ID is suggestion text. Text size is 16 sp. Now outside of this horizontal linear layout, we need to add a view that will work as a divider. So this view is our divider. Now on to our main activity. Our suggestion adapter will be simple cursor adapter. We need to add these two variables for our suggestion adapter, from and to. This en_word needs to be same as the column in our database table. And this suggestion underscore text is the ID of text view which we created earlier. And now our suggestion adapter. Suggestion adapter equal new simple cursor adapter. It takes few parameters: the context, the XML layout which we created earlier, C null, from variable, and to variable, and flag is 0. And we need to override this method. And now this search.setSuggestionAdapter sets our adapter to the search view. Now we need to add suggestion listener to handle on suggestion click. We need to override on suggestion click and on suggestion select methods. So on suggestion click, first we need to add the clicked word on our search view and then send the clicked word to our word meaning activity. So this clicked word variable is the clicked word from our suggestion, and all these codes are to get the clicked word. And then we set the text of search view to the clicked word. You can also set the text of search view to empty, but we are not keeping it empty, so I commented it. And this search.clearFocus will clear the focus, and search.setFocusable false will hide the keyboard. Now let's send the clicked word in a bundle to our word meaning activity. So this is the intent and the bundle. Bundle.putString, the key is en_word, and we sent the clicked word. And intent.putExtras bundle, and then we start the activity. We will keep on suggestion select empty. So let's add our listener. We need to override on query text submit and on query text change. Okay, now we have some work in our database helper class. So database helper, we need to add two functions that will return query results from our database. Public getMeaning, the return type is cursor and the parameter is string. Now cursor C equal mydatabase.raw query, and we added our SQL query here. So select en definition, example, synonyms, antonyms from words. So these are the columns from our words table, where en word equal text. We are passing this text when we are calling this getMeaning function. We are using this upper because all the words in our database is in uppercase. The user might not type in uppercase, so that's why we are using this upper. And we have to put null here. Now let's return the cursor. Return C. And now another similar function get suggestions, and the query is select ID en word from words, where en word like text, and then a %. The limit is 40. This limit 40 means it will show top 40 results. You can change it if you want. And here we have to put null, and then we return C. Now on to our main activity. If the user hit enter or search icon on the keyboard, then on query text submit will execute. This search.getQuery will get whatever the user typed in the search view and then set it to this text variable. And now we call mydbhelper.getMeaning with this text variable as its parameter. Our database might or might not have the word which the user typed in, so we need an if statement. If c.getCount == 0, which means the database doesn't have the word the user typed in. In that case, we need to show an alert dialog. Before that, let's set the search view to empty. So we set the search query to this with search.setQuery. And now our alert dialog. Alert dialog.builder, builder =new alert builder. The style is from our styles. If you remember, we added this style when we were working on our progress bar. Set title is word not found. Set message, please search again. Now let's add buttons. We have two buttons, OK and cancel. If the user hit OK, then nothing happens. And if the user hit cancel, we hide the keyboard. Now let's show the alert dialog. We assign builder.create to this dialog variable and then we show the dialog. And now else, which means we have the word in our database. If you want, you can set the query of search view to this. It will empty the search view, but I commented it. And then with clear focus and set focusable false, we hide the keyboard. And now we send the text to our word meaning activity with bundle. And now on query text change, we need to populate our adapter on query text change. Search.setIcon field by default false. This will add margins to our suggestion list. And here we call get suggestions from our database helper class with string s. And now suggestion adapter.change cursor to this cursor suggestion. So whenever the user is changing the text on our search view, this will show the suggestions. Okay, now let's run the app. If we type KE, we can see our suggestions. It probably has 40 suggestions because we added limit 40 in our query. If we type another E, the suggestion list is narrowed down. And if we type P, we can see only 4 words in our suggestion. So let's click on keep. We go to our word meaning activity. We didn't add any code in this word meaning activity, so this is only the UI. Let's go back. If we type another P, our database doesn't have this word, so the suggestion is empty. If we click this search icon, we can see our alert dialog. It says word not found, please search again. We can click OK or cancel. Let's click cancel. If you remember, we sent some bundle data from our main activity to this word meaning activity. So let's get those bundle data. First we need to declare some variables. A string variable enword, a database helper variable mydbhelper, and a cursor variable c, which is null. And now string variable en definition, example, synonyms and antonyms. And lastly a text to speech variable for our pronunciation button. Now let's receive the word which we sent from our main activity. So bundle get intent dot get extras, en word equal bundle dot get string, and the key is en underscore word. So in our en word variable we have the word which we sent from our main activity. Now let's open the database. MyDBHelper equal new database helper, and in a try-catch block we open the database. And now we call MyDBHelper.getMeaning with en word as its parameter. GetMeaning is the function which we created earlier. If we control click, we can see this getMeaning function. And now if c.moveToFirst, this move to first will move the cursor to the first result. So if the cursor can move to first, which means the result is not empty, then we get the data from our variables. Now we set the data from en definition column to this en definition variable, and example to this example variable, synonyms to this synonyms, and antonyms to this antonyms. Now let's set the title of our toolbar to this en word. This en word is the word the user searched in our search view. So we need to insert this en word in our history table. Now we need to create a function to insert words in our history table. So on to our database helper. So insert history takes a string parameter and mydatabase.execute_SQL. We have our query. So the query is insert into history and the value is text. We change the text to uppercase. So now in our word meaning activity, mydbhelper.insert history, the parameter is en word. With this we inserted this en word in our history table. If you remember, we added a pronunciation button. So now let's add that button. Image button button speak equal button speak. Now we need to add an on-click listener. So button speak.set on-click listener, and on click we initialize this TTS variable and on init. If the initialization is successful, we set the language to default language, else we print this log. And if the language is missing data or language is not supported, then we print this log, else we speak the en word, and we are done with our pronunciation button. Now let's add this en definition in our fragment definition. So context equal get activity, it will have the context, and text equal text view D, which is from our fragment definition layout. Now let's get the definition from our word meaning activity. This will assign en definition from our word meaning activity to this en_definition variable. And now we set the text of our text view to this en_definition. If en_definition equal null, then we set the text to no definition found. Now let's do the same thing in our fragment example. Here we get the variable example from our word meaning activity. If example is null, then we set the text to no example found. Now on to our fragment synonyms. It's pretty much same as before. We get synonyms variable from our word meaning activity. In our database, the synonyms are one string with a comma separator. So if synonyms is not null, we replace the comma with a new line, so it will look better. And then we set the text of our text view to synonyms. And if synonyms is null, we set the text to no synonyms found. And now the last one, fragment antonyms. This is same as synonyms. We get antonyms variable from our word meaning activity, and if antonyms equal null, then we set the text to no antonyms found. Okay, now let's run the app. So if we type TOP, we can see the suggestions, and if we click on top, we go to our word meaning activity. Here we can see the definition, synonyms, antonyms, and example. If we click on this pronunciation button,
Top.
we can hear the pronunciation. So let's go to our activity main XML file. Now let's add a vertical linear layout inside our coordinator layout. Layout width match parent, layout height match parent, layout behavior, app bar scrolling view behavior. We need to add this app bar scrolling view behavior because we are inside this coordinator layout, and it will put this linear layout below this app bar. Now let's add a relative layout inside this linear layout. The ID is empty history with match parent, height wrap content, gravity center, and visibility is visible. Now inside this relative layout, we'll add a text view. Layout with wrap content, layout height wrap content. Text is words you searched most recently show up here. If the history is empty, then we'll show this relative layout, and if the history is not empty, then we'll hide this relative layout. And now let's add our recycler view. The ID is recycler view history, layout margin 5 dp, layout width mesh parent, height wrap content, and scroll bars vertical. Now we need to create an XML layout that will be the design for a single item in this recycler view. So new XML, layout XML file. File name is history item layout. Finish. We'll use card view, so let's get rid of these. Layout with match parent, height wrap content, foreground, selectable item background. This selectable item background will add a ripple effect when we click the card view. Layout margin 2 dp, clickable is true. Now inside this card view, let's add a text view. The ID is en_word with wrap content, height wrap content, gravity left, layout margin 10 dp, text size 18 sp, text item 1. Now we need to create a history class. New Java class, name history. Okay. Let's add a variable, string variable en_word. Now let's create a constructor. And we set this en_word to this en_word. Now a get method, get en_word. It just returned the en_word variable. So new Java class. The name is recycler view adapter history. Okay. Recycler view adapter history extends recycler view dot adapter, and the argument is recycler view adapter history dot history view holder. We'll create this history view holder class in a moment. Let's declare some variables. A history type array list histories, a context variable context. Now let's add our constructor. So the parameter of our constructor is context and a history type array list histories, and then we set histories to this histories and this context to this context. Now let's create this history view holder class. So public class history view holder extends recycler view dot view holder, and now the constructor. So history view holder, and it calls super with v as its parameter. In this class we need to declare our text view. So text view en word, and inside this constructor we assign this text view to this en word variable. Now we need to overwrite onCreate view holder. Here we create a view with history item layout XML file and return new history view holder view. Now we need to overwrite onBind view holder. The parameter is history view holder and position. And here we get the word from histories array list and set the word to this en word text view. This get en word function is in our history class. If we control click, we can see this function. And now we need to override get item count. It just returned the size of our histories array list. Now we need to add an on-click listener to this view v so the user can click on history. v.set on-click listener, and on click, first we get the position of the clicked word and then assign the word to this text variable. And now we send this text variable to the word meaning activity in a bundle. Bundle.put string, the key is en_word, intent.put extras bundle, and here we need to add context before start activity. First, let's declare some variables. A history type array list history list, recycler view recycler view layout manager, recycler view dot adapter history adapter, relative layout empty history, and a cursor history. Now let's assign this relative layout variable. Empty history equal this empty history relative layout which we added earlier. If our history is not empty, we will hide this relative layout. Now we assign recycler view and layout manager. Recycler view.set layout manager to this layout manager. Now we call fetch history function. We need to create this fetch history function, so let's create fetch history function. So private void fetch history. History list equal new array list. History adapter equal new recycler view adapter history. This is the recycler adapter class we created earlier. The parameter of recycler view adapter history is context this and history list array list. And then we set the adapter of recycler view to this history adapter. Now we declare this history type variable h. Now on to our database helper class. We need to create a get history function that will get all the history from our history table. So public cursor get history, cursor c equal mydatabase.raw query, and the query is select distinct word from history. If we have multiple same word in our history table, then this distinct will return only the distinct values. So that's why we are using distinct. And order by underscore id descending. This underscore id is auto incremented in our database. So if we want to show the new history first, then we need to order it in a descending order. And then we return the cursor c. Now on to our main activity. If database opened is true, then we call mydvhelper.getHistory and assign it to this cursor history. And now if cursor history.moveToFirst, this move to first will move the cursor to the first result. Inside this if, we add a do while loop that will pass through each data in cursor history with cursor history.moveToNext. And now we get the word from our history table and assign it to this history h variable. Then we add this h to our history list. So with this do while loop, we add all the words from history table to this history list variable. And now we need to add history adapter.notify dataset changed. This will refresh the recycler view. And now if we have 0 item in our history adapter, that means our history is empty. Then we make this empty history relative layout visible. Else, which means our history is not empty, we hide this empty history relative layout. We need to call this fetch history function on activity resume also. If you remember, we added insert history in our word meaning activity. Here mydvhelper.insert history. So when the user searches a word, our app will go to the word meaning activity and then it will insert the word in our history table. So after that, when the user comes back to main activity, the user won't see the newly searched word in the history. That's why we need to call fetch history on activity resume. So on resume, we call fetch history. So let's go to our settings activity. Let's declare database helper variable mydvhelper. Now let's assign our text view clear history equal this clear history. We need to add on click listener on this clear history. So clear history.set on click listener, and on click we assign mydvhelper equal new database helper, and we open the database in a try catch block, and after that we call this show alert dialog function. Now on to our database helper, we need to create a delete history function. So public void delete history mydatabase.execute SQL. The query is delete from history. This will delete all the data from history table. So on to our settings activity. Let's create this show alert dialog function. So private void show alert dialog. Alert dialog.builder builder equal new alert dialog. The style is from our styles XML. The title is are you sure, and the message is all the history will be deleted. Now let's add buttons. If the user click yes, then we call this mydbhelper.delete history, and if the user click no, we do nothing. And now we show the dialog. Okay, so let's run the app. I already added some words in the history. These are the words. Currently apple is the most recently searched word. If we type like, we can see the suggestions. Let's click on like. We go to our word meaning activity. Let's go back, and the like is on top. Now let's go to settings. If we click on clear history, we can see our alert. Let's click yes. Let's go back. Now our history is empty. We are seeing this text because the history is empty. Let's search like again. Let's go back. Now we have only like in our history table. The text view is gone because the history is not empty, but it's looking quite empty. So in this video we'll add definition under each word. In that way it will look more complete. Okay, let's open history item layout. Let's make this margin from 2 to 5 dp. Now let's add a vertical linear layout. Layout with match parent, layout height match parent, layout margin 10 dp. Now let's remove the margin from this text view and change the text size from 18 to 16 sp. Now let's move this text view inside the linear layout and add a text style bold. Now let's add another text view for our definition. The ID is en_def, text style italic, max line 2 and ellipse size end. Ellipse size ends means if our definition has more than 2 lines, it will add 3 dots at the end. Okay, now let's open our history class. We need to add another string variable endef, and in the constructor we'll add another parameter. And now we set this endef to endef. Now let's add a getDef method. It returns the definition. Now that this history constructor has 2 parameters, we also need to make a change in our main activity. We can already see an error here. So in this history, the first parameter is the word and the second parameter is the definition. But we didn't select the definition in our get history query. So let's control click get history and we can see get history. To get the definition we need to join history and words table. So the new query is select distinct word en definition from history h, join words w on h dot word equal en underscore word, order by h dot underscore id descending. Now on to our main activity. We add the definition in the second parameter. Here we put the name of the database column. Now on to our recycler view adapter history. Let's add another text view endef. Now let's assign this text view. And now on bind view holder, we get the definition and set it to endef. Okay, so let's run the app. Now it's looking quite nice. Let's click on gigabyte. We can see the definition. Let's go back. Now let's search a word N-I. Now watch what happens when I put single quote in this search view. And the app just crashed. So why did that happen? Let's open our database helper class. And in this get suggestions method, in the query after like we have a single quote. If we put a single quote in our search bar, then this text variable will have a single quote. And the app will take that single quote as the end of the string. But that is not the end of the string, because we have a % and then a single quote. And that's why the app crashed. So to fix this, we need to check this text parameter before calling get suggestions. So on to our main activity. Here on query text change, we call this get suggestions. So to perform this check, we are going to use regular expression. So pattern p equal pattern.compile, and this is the pattern. It will accept uppercase A to Z, lowercase a to z, a space, minus and dot character. And this 1 and 25 means any of these can occur from minimum 1 to maximum 25 times. We are accepting space, minus and dot because few of the words in our database have space, minus and dot. Now with matcher m equal p.matcher, we are gonna match this S string with our pattern. Now if m.matches is true, we move these codes inside if. We also need to perform this check before we call get meaning. So we put our pattern and this time we match it with this text variable. Now we are going to move these codes inside a function. So the function is show alert dialog. Now inside this if we call show alert dialog. Now if m.matches is true, we put the whole code inside if, and else, which means it didn't match, we call show alert dialog. Okay, so let's run the app. Let's search a word N-I. Let's put a single quote, and it's not crashing. If I click this search icon, it says word not found. So when the user chooses to share any word with our app will show the meaning of that word. Now let's go to Android manifest. To receive data, we need to add an intent filter to let the system know what type of data we are willing to accept. And we'll add this intent filter in word meaning activity. With Android intent action send, we can receive intent from this action. Category is default and MIME type is text plain because we'll only accept text type data. And here we need to add Android launch mode single task. If we don't add single task, it will create multiple tasks of our app. Now on to our word meaning activity. Now in order to receive the shared word, we need get intent, get action and get type. And now we check if the action is action sent and type is not null. And with another if, we check the type to see if it's text plain type. If it's true, we get the text to this shared text variable. And if the shared text is not null, we match it with our pattern. And if it matches, then we assign it to this enword variable. And else, which means it doesn't match, we assign not available to this enword variable. Now let's move this insert history inside this if. And else, which means the word is not in our database, we assign not available to this enword variable. Okay, now let's run the app. Now let's open a browser. Now let's select the word take and click share. Here we can see our app. Okay, so let's select this and we can see the definition of take. Now let's share another word. Now let's select this sentence and share dictionary not available. And now if we click back, our app just exits, but it should go to our main activity. So let's fix that. Let's create a boolean variable started from share and set it to false. And inside this if, we assign it to true. And now on option item selected, if started from share is true, then we start our main activity, and we need to set flags to flag activity new task, flag activity clear task, and then we start the activity, and else we call on back pressed. And now on to our main activity. Now we'll add double back press to exit our app. It will help our app from exiting on accidental back press. Let's add a boolean variable double back to exit pressed once and set it to false. Now we need to override the method on back pressed. On back pressed, if double back to exit pressed once is true, we call super on back pressed, and then we set double back to exit pressed once to true and make this toast. And now we'll run this handler for 2 seconds, and after 2 seconds we set double back to exit pressed once to false. If the user presses back again within these 2 seconds, our app will exit. Now let's run the app. Now let's press back. We can see our toast. Now let's press back twice within 2 seconds. And now let's share the word place dictionary, and we can see the definition. Let's press back and we go to our main activity. That is all for this video.